I've always believed that trust is the foundation of any marriage, a fragile thread woven through years of shared laughter, quiet mornings, and whispered promises. For 15 years, Clara and I built a life on that thread. We met in college, two awkward kids in a literature class, bonding over our mutual disdain for Hemingway's machismo and our love for quiet coffee shops. She was sharp, with a wit that could cut glass, and eyes that seemed to hold secrets even when she was laughing. I was smitten from the start, and when we married 3 years later, I thought we'd cracked the code to forever. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We settled in a small town outside Portland, in a craftsman-style house with creaky floors and a backyard that Clara turned into a jungle of roses and herbs. I worked as a structural engineer, designing bridges that would outlast me, while Clara ran a bakery downtown, her hands always dusted with flour, her smile greeting customers like old friends. We had 2 kids, Ellie, our fierce 12-year-old who inherited her mother's wit, and Max, our 9-year-old dreamer who'd rather sketch birds than kick a soccer ball. Life was good, predictable, warm, until it wasn't. The first hint came in the form of a scent. It was subtle, a whiff of cedar and citrus that clung to Clara's scarf when she came home late one evening last spring. She'd been working longer hours at the bakery, she said, experimenting with new recipes for the summer menu. I didn't think much of it at first. Clara was passionate about her work, and late nights weren't unusual. But the scent lingered, unfamiliar, not hers, not mine. I brushed it off, chalking it up to a new customer or a delivery guy who'd leaned too close. I wasn't the jealous type. Jealousy was for men who didn't trust their wives, and I trusted Clara with every fiber of my being. But the scent wasn't a one-time thing. It followed her home again, then again, always faint, always the same. I started noticing other things, small, insignificant on their own, but together they formed a mosaic I couldn't ignore. Her phone, once left carelessly on the kitchen counter, was now always in her pocket or turned face down. She'd laugh at texts in the middle of dinner, her eyes darting away when I asked who it was. Just a supplier, she'd say, or a friend from the bakery. Her excuses were smooth, practiced, and I wanted to believe them. I did believe them for a while. Then there was the night she forgot her scarf at the bakery. It was a Friday, and I'd offered to pick it up on my way home from a site visit. The bakery was closed, but Clara had given me a spare key years ago. I let myself in, the bell above the door jingling softly in the dark. The place smelled of cinnamon and yeast, a comforting mix that usually made me smile. I found the scarf draped over a chair in the back office, and as I picked it up, that cedar citrus scent hit me again, stronger this time. On the desk was a coffee mug I didn't recognize, a sleek, black ceramic thing with a handle shaped like a crescent moon. Clara drank from chipped thrift store mugs. Not this. I held it, turning it over in my hands, my stomach twisting. It wasn't hers. I didn't confront her that night. Couldn't. The kids were asleep when I got home, and Clara was in the shower, humming a tune I didn't recognize. I stood outside the bathroom door, the scarf in my hand, the mug in my bag, and I felt like a stranger in my own house. I wanted to ask her, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I was seeing shadows where there was only light? I put the scarf on the counter, hid the mug in my office, and went to bed, lying awake beside her, listening to her breathe. The next morning, I started watching her more closely. It wasn't intentional at first, just a heightened awareness, like tuning into a frequency I'd ignored for years. I noticed how she'd linger in the bathroom, her phone screen glowing through the crack under the door. I saw the way she'd blush when certain notifications pinged, her fingers quick to swipe them away. I started checking her schedule, something I'd never done before. Clara was meticulous, her calendar synced to mine so we could juggle the kids' activities. But now there were gaps, hours marked as errands or meeting with no details. Once, I drove by the bakery during one of those gaps, just to see if her car was there. It wasn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. Clara loved me. She'd chosen me, hadn't she? We'd built a life, a family, a home. But doubt is a slow poison, and it was seeping into me, staining every memory with questions. I started checking her phone when she was asleep, not reading her messages. Not yet, just looking at the apps she'd left open, the notifications she hadn't cleared. There was a name that kept popping up. Ethan. No last name, just Ethan with a little coffee cup emoji next to it. I didn't know any Ethan. She'd never mentioned an Ethan. But there he was in her texts, her call log, her calendar. A meeting with Ethan at a cafe in the next town over. A late-night call from Ethan that lasted 23 minutes. A text from Ethan that said, "Can't stop thinking about you." I felt like I'd been punched. I sat there in the dark, her phone in my hand, my heart hammering so loud I was sure it would wake her. I wanted to shake her, to scream, to demand who Ethan was and why he was thinking about her. But I didn't. I put the phone back, exactly as I'd found it, and I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to breathe through the weight crushing my chest. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed her. It was a Saturday, and she said she was meeting a supplier to discuss organic flour. I offered to drive her, but she waved me off, saying it was easier to go alone. I waited until her car pulled out, then I followed, keeping my distance, my hands sweating on the steering wheel. She didn't go to the mill or the market. She drove to a small, upscale cafe in a neighboring town, one we'd never been to together. I parked across the street, hidden behind a delivery van, and watched her walk inside. She looked different. Her hair was down, loose and curling over her shoulders, not in the practical bun she wore at the bakery. She was wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years, a deep green thing that hugged her curves. She looked beautiful, radiant, and it broke my heart. I saw him before she did. A man mid-30s tall with dark hair and a casual confidence that made my skin crawl. He stood when she approached, his smile wide, his hand lingering on her arm as he kissed her cheek. They sat at a corner table, their heads close, their laughter soft but unmistakable through the cafe's open window. I don't know how long I sat there, watching them. Could have been minutes or hours. Every touch, every glance, felt like a knife twisting deeper. He reached across the table, brushing her hand, and she didn't pull away. She leaned into it, her smile warm, intimate. I wanted to storm in, to upend their table, to demand answers in front of everyone. But I didn't. I drove home, my vision blurred, my hands shaking so badly I nearly ran a red light. That night I confronted her. I waited until the kids were in bed, until the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Clara was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters, her movements slow, deliberate. I stood in the doorway, the mug from the bakery in my hand. "Whose is this?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. She froze, just for a second, before turning to me with a smile. "Oh, that is probably one of the staff's. People leave things lying around. I didn't buy it. It was in your office, Clara. On your desk." Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Maybe it's a customer's. I don't know, Ben. Why does it matter?" "It matters because you're lying to me." The words came out before I could stop them, sharp and heavy. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw something flicker in them. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "Who's Ethan?" I asked, stepping closer. "And don't tell me he's a supplier, because I saw you with him today." The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked away, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. "Ben, it's not what you think," she said finally, her voice soft, pleading. "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Because it looks like you're sneaking around behind my back, meeting some guy in secret, laughing with him, letting him touch you. It's not like that." She cut in, her voice rising. "Ethan's just a friend. We talk, that's all. He's going through a rough time, and I've been helping him." "Helping him?" I laughed, a bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. "You're meeting him in secret, lying about where you're going, texting him in the middle of the night. That's not helping, Clara. That's something else." She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, her eyes fixed on the floor, her silence louder than any confession. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." The words hit me like a physical blow. This far, I repeated. What does that mean, Clara? How far did it go? She looked up at me then, her eyes wet, her voice trembling. I don't know how to explain it, she said. It wasn't supposed to happen. It was just a moment, a mistake, a mistake. The word echoed in my head, hollow and sharp. I wanted to ask for details, what kind of mistake, when, where, how many times, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. The truth was already there, in her eyes, in the way she couldn't meet mine for long. Do you love him? I asked instead, my voice barely above a whisper. No, she said quickly, too quickly. I love you, Ben. I love our family. It was nothing. It's over. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. It was the shattering of the life I thought we had, the trust I'd built my world on. I didn't say anything else. Couldn't. I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, and sat in my car in the driveway, staring at the stars until they blurred into nothing. That night I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, replaying every moment, every lie, every smile she'd given him. I thought about the kids, about what this would do to them, to us. I thought about Ethan, this stranger who'd walked into my life and taken something that was mine. And somewhere in the dark, a seed of anger took root, growing into something cold, sharp, and unstoppable. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this go, not without making them both pay. The days after Clara's confession were a blur of silence and rage, a storm trapped inside me that I didn't know how to unleash. I moved through our house like a ghost, going through the motions, making breakfast for Ellie and Max, driving them to school, nodding at Clara's attempts at conversation. But every word she spoke felt like a blade, every glance a reminder of her betrayal. She tried to fix things in her way. She'd leave notes on the fridge, small apologies scrawled in her neat handwriting. I'm so sorry, Ben. Let's talk. She'd touch my arm in passing, her fingers lingering, but I'd pull away, unable to stomach the contact. I didn't trust myself to speak. Not yet. The anger was too raw, too vast, and I was afraid of what I might say or do if I let it out. I didn't confront her again about Ethan. I didn't need to. The truth was a weight between us, heavy and unspoken. She stopped mentioning him, stopped staying late at the bakery, stopped taking her phone into the bathroom. But it was too late for that. The damage was done, and no amount of her newfound transparency could erase the image of her laughing with him. His hand on hers, her eyes bright in a way they hadn't been for me in months. I couldn't unsee it, couldn't unfeel the betrayal. And so I started planning. It began with Ethan. I needed to know who he was, what he was to her, what kind of man could waltz into my life and upend it. Clara's phone was a dead end. She'd started locking it, a change so obvious it was almost insulting, but I had other ways. I remembered the cafe, the one in the next town over, and I drove there one afternoon when Clara thought I was at a site visit. The place was small, trendy, with exposed brick walls and a chalkboard menu that screamed overpriced coffee. I sat at the counter, ordered a black coffee I didn't drink, and watched the staff. It didn't take long to spot him. He was behind the bar, wiping down the espresso machine with a practiced ease, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he chatted with a customer. Ethan. I knew it was him before I saw the name tag pinned to his apron. He had that same casual confidence I'd seen through the cafe window, a charm that made the woman he was serving laugh a little too loudly. He was younger than me, maybe 35, with a lean build and a smile that was all teeth and no sincerity. I hated him instantly, a visceral, burning hatred that made my hands clench around my untouched coffee mug. I didn't approach him that day. I just watched, cataloging every detail. His easy laugh, the way he leaned in when he spoke to women, the tattoo of a compass peeking out from under his rolled-up sleeve. I noted the hours he worked, the way he lingered after his shift to chat with the other baristas. I overheard him mention a gym nearby, a place called Iron Pulse, and I filed it away. I started building a picture of his life, piece by piece, without him ever knowing I was there. Back home, I dug deeper. I used Clara's laptop when she was at the bakery, Her password unchanged since we'd set it up years ago. Her email was a goldmine, not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. She deleted entire threads, leaving gaps in her inbox that corresponded with the dates I'd seen Ethan's name on her phone. But she wasn't as careful as she thought. In her browser history, I found searches for Ethan Caldwell, Iron Pulse schedule, and, most damning, hotels near Portland. My stomach churned, but I kept going, clicking through links until I found his social media profiles. Ethan Caldwell was a nobody, or so he seemed. A barista with a side hustle as a personal trainer, posting shirtless gym selfies and inspirational quotes about living your truth. His posts were littered with comments from women, their emojis and compliments feeding his ego. I scrolled through months of his life, nights out at bars, hiking trips with friends, a photo of him and Clara at a farmer's market. Her arm looped through his, her smile wide and unguarded. The caption read, "Best company, best day." It was dated 3 weeks ago. I stared at it until my vision blurred, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, itching to do something, anything, to make him feel the pain I was drowning in. But I didn't act impulsively. I couldn't afford to. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about lashing out in the heat of the moment. It was about precision, about crafting something that would hurt them both as deeply as they'd hurt me. I started with Ethan's routines. I drove to Iron Pulse one evening, signing up for a guest pass under a fake name. The gym was loud, all clanging weights and thumping music, and there he was, leading a group class in a mirrored studio. He was charismatic, commanding attention with every shout of encouragement, his eyes scanning the room for approval. I lingered in the weight room, blending in, watching him through the glass. I noted his schedule, his clients, the way he flirted with a woman in yoga pants after class. I started going regularly, not to work out, but to learn him, his habits, his weaknesses. At home, I kept up the facade of normalcy. Clara noticed the distance, of course. She tried to bridge it with small gestures, cooking my favorite meals, suggesting date nights, but I couldn't reciprocate. Every time I looked at her, I saw her with him, and the anger would flare anew. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I needed space to think. The kids sensed something was off. Ellie's usual chatter turned sullen, and Max clung to me more, his drawings darker, full of jagged lines and stormy skies. I hated what this was doing to them, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. My plan took shape over weeks, meticulous and cold. Ethan's life was predictable, his ego his biggest vulnerability. He thrived on attention, on being desired, and I decided to use that against him. I created a fake profile on a dating app, using photos of a distant cousin who'd moved to Europe years ago. I named her Lila, gave her a backstory as a free-spirited artist who'd just moved to town. I swiped right on Ethan, and within hours, he matched with Lila, his messages dripping with charm. I played along, flirting just enough to keep him hooked, arranging a meetup at a bar he frequented. I had no intention of showing up, but I wanted him there, distracted, exposed. The second part of my plan was riskier. I needed to know how far Clara's betrayal had gone, and I needed evidence, not just for my own clarity, but for what I had in mind. I bought a small tracking device, the kind used for lost luggage, and slipped it into the lining of her purse one morning while she was in the shower. It was a violation, I knew, but so was her secrecy. The app on my phone showed her movements, home, the bakery, the kids' school. But then there were detours. A park on the edge of town, a hotel parking lot, a residential street I didn't recognize. I cross-referenced the address with Ethan's social media. It was his apartment complex. I followed her one evening, my heart pounding as I parked a block away from Ethan's building. Her car was there in the visitor lot, and through the window of a ground-floor apartment I saw them. They weren't touching, not then, but the intimacy was unmistakable. Clara sitting cross-legged on his couch, a glass of wine in her hand, him leaning forward, talking animatedly. I took photos, my hands shaking, the camera lens a cold barrier between me and the truth. I didn't confront them. I drove home, uploaded the photos to a hidden folder on my laptop, and waited. The final piece of my plan was the cruelest, and it targeted Clara directly. I knew her better than anyone. Her fears, her insecurities, the things that kept her up at night. She'd always been terrified of losing the bakery, her life's work, the one thing that was hers alone. It was her sanctuary, her pride, and I decided to take it from her. Not permanently, not yet, but enough to make her feel the loss, the way I'd felt it. I started by contacting her suppliers anonymously, posing as a concerned customer, hinting at health code violations, late deliveries, anything to sow doubt. I left reviews on local sites, subtle but damaging, questioning the bakery's cleanliness, its service. I knew it would hurt her, not just financially but emotionally, and that was the point. I also hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Paul who came recommended by a colleague. I gave him Ethan's name, Clara's schedule, the photos I'd taken. I didn't tell him everything, just enough to get him digging. Within a week, he had a file, Ethan's financial records, his employment history, his string of short-lived relationships. There were red flags, unpaid debts, a restraining order from an ex, a history of moving from one woman to the next. Paul also confirmed what I'd suspected. Clara had been to Ethan's apartment multiple times, always when I was at work or out of town. The investigator's photos were clinical, detached, but they burned. Clara and Ethan in the park, his arm around her. Clara leaving his apartment at midnight, her hair mussed. I didn't show Clara the photos. I didn't confront her again. Instead, I let the plan unfold. The supplier complaints started hitting the bakery. Deliveries delayed, orders canceled. Customers dwindled, drawn away by the online whispers. Clara came home stressed, her eyes red from crying, talking about how she didn't understand what was happening. I listened, nodded, offered hollow comfort, all the while knowing I was the architect of her pain. It felt good, in a sick way, to see her unravel, to know she was suffering as I had. As for Ethan, Lila kept him on a string, canceling meetups at the last minute, feeding his ego with flirty messages, keeping him chasing. I wanted him distracted, vulnerable, his life unraveling in parallel to Clara's. I wasn't done with him yet, but I was patient. The final act was coming, and it would be precise, devastating, and aimed at both of them. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices, to lose something irreplaceable, just as I had. And so I waited, my anger a cold, steady flame, guiding me toward the endgame. The air in our house had turned brittle, each day a tightrope walk over a chasm of unspoken truths. Clara's attempts to mend things grew more desperate. She'd cook elaborate dinners, suggest family outings, leave voicemails when I stayed late at work. But her efforts only fueled my resolve. Every smile she offered felt like a mockery, every touch a reminder of her hands on him. I'd become a stranger to myself, consumed by a cold, calculating fury that I barely recognized. The plan I'd set in motion was no longer just about justice. It was about dismantling their worlds, piece by piece, until they understood the depth of my pain. Ethan was the easier target. His ego, his need for validation, made him predictable. Lila, my fabricated artist, had him wrapped around her virtual finger. I'd spent weeks crafting her persona, feeding him just enough mystery to keep him obsessed. I'd send messages late at night, mirroring the times he'd texted Clara, each word designed to pull him deeper into the trap. I arranged a final meetup at a bar called the Rusty Anchor, a dimly lit dive he'd mentioned in one of his posts. The plan was simple. He'd show up, wait for a woman who'd never arrive, and while he was there, I'd make sure his world started to crumble. I'd done my homework. Ethan's life was a house of cards. Unpaid bills, a landlord breathing down his neck, a gym job that barely covered his rent. I'd already nudged the first domino by contacting his landlord anonymously, reporting concerns about late-night visitors and noise complaints. I'd also tipped off his boss at Iron Pulse about his side hustle, scheduling private training sessions during gym hours, a violation of their rules. But the bar was where it would all come together. I'd hired a woman through a discreet service, not for anything illicit, just to play a part. Her name was Rachel, a freelance actress with a knack for improvisation. I gave her a script. Approach Ethan, flirt, get him talking, and plant a seed of doubt about his charm, his stability, his worth. That night, I watched from across the street, parked in a rental car to avoid recognition. Ethan arrived at the Rusty Anchor at 8 sharp, dressed in a fitted jacket. His hair slicked back, scanning the room for Lila. Rachel was already there, perched at the bar, her auburn hair catching the light. She played her role perfectly, engaging him in conversation, laughing at his jokes, then subtly shifting the tone. I couldn't hear their words, but I saw his body language change. The confident lean becoming a slouch, the easy smile tightening. Rachel leaned in, her expression sympathetic, and I knew she was delivering the lines I'd written. You seem like a great guy, but I heard some things. Unpaid debts, a messy breakup. I just don't know if I can trust someone with that kind of baggage. Ethan's face fell, his hand pausing mid-gesture. Rachel excused herself, leaving him alone at the bar, staring into his drink. I'd paid her well, and she'd done her job, planting a seed that would grow into paranoia. I wasn't done, though. While he was distracted, I'd arranged for a friend of Paul, the private investigator, to slip into Ethan's apartment. Nothing illegal, just a quick visit to leave a few strategic items. A fake eviction notice taped to his door, a letter from a creditor demanding immediate payment, and a note from an anonymous friend, hinting that his exes were talking, spreading rumors about his instability. It was psychological warfare, designed to make him question his charm, his control, his life. Clara was harder. Her betrayal cut deeper, and her punishment had to be personal. The bakery was already suffering. Suppliers had pulled back, customers had dwindled, and Clara was fraying under the stress. She'd come home each night pale, her hands trembling as she pored over spreadsheets, trying to figure out why her business was collapsing. I'd listened to her vent, my face a mask of concern, while inside I felt a twisted satisfaction. But it wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the betrayal as I had, to lose something she couldn't replace. I started with her reputation. Clara prided herself on being the heart of the community, the baker who knew everyone's name, who remembered birthdays and anniversaries. I used that against her. I created anonymous accounts on local forums, posting subtle but damning stories. A customer claiming they'd found mold in her bread, another hinting at rude service, a third suggesting she was cutting corners with cheap ingredients. The rumors spread like wildfire in our small town, whispers turning into sidelong glances at the grocery store, awkward silences at PDA meetings. Clara noticed, of course. She'd cry in the bathroom when she thought I couldn't hear, her confidence eroding with every lost customer. But the bakery wasn't enough. I needed something that would hit her where it hurt most, her sense of self, her identity as a good mother, a good wife. I started planting evidence of my own pain, letting her see the consequences of her actions without ever admitting I knew the full extent. I left my laptop open one night, a folder of photos visible, pictures of her and Ethan, not just the ones from Paul but others I'd found by hacking into her cloud storage. There were selfies from a hotel room, her hair tangled, his arm around her. I didn't confront her about them. I just let her find them, let her stew in the guilt of knowing I'd seen. The next morning, she was a wreck, her eyes red, her voice shaky as she tried to explain. Ben, I swear it was a mistake. It's over. I ended it weeks ago. I didn't respond, just looked at her, letting the silence speak for me. She broke down, sobbing, begging me to talk, to forgive her. I couldn't. Instead, I escalated. I contacted a lawyer, not for divorce, not yet, but to explore my options. I wanted Clara to know I was serious, that her actions had consequences. I left the lawyer's card on the kitchen counter, where she'd see it. When she asked about it, I said, I'm just protecting myself, Clara. I have to think about the kids. Her face crumpled, and for a moment, I felt a pang of guilt. But then I remembered her laughter with Ethan, the way she'd lied to my face, and the guilt burned away. The final piece was the cruelest, and it targeted both of them. I'd learned from Paul that Ethan had a history of crossing lines, flirting with clients, pushing boundaries, leaving a trail of hurt feelings. I used that to my advantage. I contacted one of his exes, a woman named Sarah who'd posted vaguely about toxic men on her social media. Posing as a concerned friend, I reached out, feeding her just enough information to reignite her anger. I suggested she share her story publicly, hinting that others might come forward. She did, posting a detailed account of Ethan's manipulation, his lies, his wandering eye. The post went viral in our small community, and soon other women chimed in, their stories painting a picture of a man who preyed on trust. Clara saw the posts. I made sure of it, leaving my phone open on the couch, the screen glowing with Sarah's words. She read them, her hands shaking, and I watched the realization hit her. Ethan wasn't the charming savior she'd imagined. He was a pattern, and she was just another mark. She didn't say anything, but I saw the shame in her eyes, the way she shrank into herself. It was exactly what I'd wanted, to strip away her illusion, to make her see the man she'd risked our marriage for. The climax came at a town festival, a spring fair where Clara's bakery always had a booth. This year, her booth was half empty, her usual crowd thinned by the rumors I'd spread. Ethan was there, too, working a coffee stall for the cafe. I'd planned for this moment, orchestrating it with the precision of an engineer. Rachel, my actress, was there, mingling with the crowd, dropping hints to anyone who'd listen about Ethan's reputation. Paul's friend, posing as a health inspector, approached Clara's booth, asking pointed questions about her permits, her storage practices. It was all theater, but it worked. Clara was flustered, her voice cracking as she answered, her customers drifting away. I stood at the edge of the fair, watching it unfold. Ethan's stall was nearly empty, his charm failing under the weight of the rumors. Clara was crumbling, her dreams slipping through her fingers. And then, the final touch. I'd arranged for a local blogger, tipped off anonymously, to confront Ethan publicly. She approached his stall, phone in hand, live streaming as she asked about the allegations, the debts, the exes. Ethan stammered, his face red, his confidence shattered. Clara saw it all, her booth just yards away, and I saw the moment it hit her, the connection between her betrayal and the public humiliation of the man she'd chosen. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath. I walked back to my car, the sounds of the fair fading behind me. For the first time in months, I felt a strange calm. They'd both lost something, Ethan his reputation, Clara her pride, her business, her sense of self. It wasn't forgiveness. It was retribution. I didn't know what came next for us, for our marriage, for the kids. But as I drove home, the weight in my chest was lighter, replaced by a cold satisfaction. They'd hurt me and I'd hurt them back. The scales were balanced for now.